Welcome, you're listening to Dementia Help and Advice.
Sans crier gare, je me suis retourné, disparu dans la brume, un peu trop écœuré de ces années perdues, à trop vouloir chercher à qui mettre la faute sans jamais me regarder, essayer de comprendre le pourquoi, le comment. T'es parti en courant, tanné de faire façon vain.
Hello, a very warm welcome to the podcast Dementia Help and Advice. My name is Stephen G. Morris. I'm going to be your guide in this episode. And tonight we're going to be looking at brain health in general and some of the factors which we know are connected to brain health and therefore are likely to be strongly correlated with reducing or increasing your risks of dementia in general and Alzheimer's dementia in particular. So because dementia is such a complex range of illnesses, we can regard the subject of tonight's podcast to be about brain health in general, and we shall drill down into the individual subject areas in relation to specific forms of dementia in future episodes. So this is almost a way of getting the ball rolling and to get people thinking about brain health in general. There isn't likely to be one cause of all forms of dementia. That's already known. However, there are common factors which appear likely to be linked with an increasing or a decreasing probability of developing dementia in later life. The first thing on my list I've called meditation. That's because I'm a cognitive psychologist and I've had a training in neuroscience, and my area of expertise is meditation. Now, a large part of the evidence that I've seen, the scientific evidence and clinical trials as well, is that regular forms of meditation appear to be linked to certain enhanced cognitive functions, so that we're able to perform mentally better in some ways. Now, this isn't a simple matter to summarize in a podcast such as this. There are, I estimate, 15,000 published scientific and academic studies linked to meditation and health, meditation and well-being. There isn't a lot of direct work that connects meditation to Alzheimer's dementia or prevention from Alzheimer's dementia, but the basic idea that regular meditation improves your brain health is now becoming firmly established. One of the recent studies that I saw indicated that people that had meditated regularly had brains that were up to 7 years younger than people that hadn't meditated at age 50. So that if you've been meditating for quite a long time, you can expect your brain to be younger in terms of function and structure than someone that hasn't been meditating. So that's going to be number one on the list. If you'd like to improve your brain health, meditate regularly. Number two, smoking. I used to smoke, my parents smoke, and I don't really want to simply come across as repeating previous health messages that you have already heard. But the evidence is your brain health can be linked to smoking. One study in particular I've seen that even at the age of, if people give up smoking at 65, it can still reduce their chances of developing neurodegeneration even later in their life. There's not really a lot more that needs to be said. I know it's not great for people that are addicted to smoking, but amongst the things you could do to improve your brain health in the medium to long term is to give up smoking immediately. In addition to the health benefits you'll get from giving up smoking, from meditating, look to your overall physical fitness and the overall health of your body. And in terms of how well your circulation works, in terms of how well your heart works, in terms of how well your lungs work, it appears to be self-evident, it appears to be obvious, but the data I've seen suggests that the healthier heart you've got, the healthier lungs you've got, the healthier body you've got, that's one of the things you can do to keep your brain working to the highest possible level of performance. Think about your brain health linked to your body health. And any small things you can do, or even large things you can do to improve the health of your body, you're likely to see some benefit both directly and indirectly to your brain. It's not simply that if your heart functions more efficiently that you're going to get some direct benefit to the brain, but it's also how you feel about yourself, your quality of life, the happiness and pleasure. If you're not worried about your health all the time, that's likely to have a positive effect on your overall being. The next point on my list is obesity. Now, I'm not going to dwell on this too long because we've spoken about overall health, and we'll be speaking about fitness, and we'll be speaking about diet. But just so you know that if you are obese, you're putting your whole organism under pressure, and you are less healthy in many different respects, and that's linked to your brain and your nervous system as well. Okay, number 5, diet. Now, we've spoken briefly about obesity, and we've also spoken about your overall health and fitness. But there is increasing evidence that there are links between the kind of food that you eat and the overall health that you can enjoy. And this could well be extended to brain health. Now, I'm not going to give specific information about that right now. That's going to be the subject of one of the future podcasts. So you're going to have to tune in for more specific information. But if it's something that concerns you straight away, do a little bit of research online. If you haven't got access to reliable online research, if you talk to your doctor about that and say, what can you tell me about how diet might be linked to my brain health or may be linked to neurodegeneration, I'm sure they'll be able to give you some more information. But we'll be covering that in a lot more detail in the future. Right, that's the halfway point. We'll just take stock for a moment and I'll be right back with you.
Sans crier gare, je me suis retourné, disparu dans la brume, un peu trop écœuré de ces années perdues, à trop vouloir chercher à qui mettre la faute sans jamais me regarder, essayer de comprendre le pourquoi, le comment.
So, to sum up very quickly, the first 5 factors that we've looked at that are linked to increasing or decreasing your chances of neurodegeneration in later life. Number 1, meditation, regular meditation. This is a big subject area, and I've already said we will be covering it in a later episode, but the principle of reliable meditation methods that are practiced consistently over a period of time. Second, smoking. You don't need me to tell you it's not good for your health, but it's specifically linked to problems with your brain as well. The overall health of your body, how well your lungs and your heart and your total organism works. That's also, the healthier you are, the lower your risks of neurodegeneration will be in later life. That doesn't mean that you can guarantee that you will not develop dementia. It just means that the chances are likely statistically to be less. Obesity. If you are chronically obese, it's likely to have implications for the health of your brain. Number 5 on our list of how to look after your brain health and how to protect yourself against neurodegeneration is diet. you need to think about what you're eating. As a very general principle, fresh fruit and vegetables appear to be good for almost every aspect of our health. As someone who's practiced as a vegan and a vegetarian, there are some nutriments that we can't get from just fruit and vegetables, but as a very basic principle, you need to be eating fresh fruit and vegetables at every meal. Not exclusively fresh fruit and vegetables, but it needs, if you want to look after your physical and your brain health, you need to make it a priority. So now we can move in to the remaining 5 factors. And staying mentally active is how I've summed up factor 6. One of the ways we can think about brain health in general is use it or lose it. By retaining activity, we are making demands on our brain, and our brain will generally try and respond to those demands. So the example would be, one of the best ways of retaining memory is to be engaged in activities that are demanding performance from your memory. Now, one of the issues with brain training is that if you are playing a game that's linked to your brain, your memory function, then you will enhance or maintain the specific cognitive abilities linked to maintaining and enhancing whatever it is you're doing in the game. Whereas if you are involved in real world memory activities, for example, the kind that you would find in your place of work, or if you're socially engaged, remembering people's names and telephone numbers, where you were this time last week, what you've got to do tomorrow at 3 p.m., what the doctor's telephone number has changed to. It's by actually staying engaged with all of that world that the evidence suggests that you may be doing yourself a great service. You may be helping your brain to retain its youth and its vigor and its function. It's a very general area, but you can see it's quite intuitive as well to think that by carrying on doing something, we are encouraging our brain to carry on doing something. We are protecting our brain from a premature aging. That follows on to point 7 on the list: remain socially engaged. And one of the things that used to happen to people in my own family is when they reached retirement, people would start to disengage from some of the social and professional life that they had before. That's only a generalization, because I can think of my maternal grandmother who, when she retired, she actually enjoyed quite a full retirement for some of the time. My own mother did, to a certain extent as well. But I have other examples in my family and amongst my friends of people whose life changed quite dramatically on the day that they retired from work. There isn't a simple answer to this. And again, being socially engaged isn't a guarantee that you will protect or you will increase your protection against cognitive decline or neurodegeneration. But there is evidence that suggests the more contact you stay in with the wider range of people, you're actually drawing on resources all the time to have to talk to people, to have to remember what's been said, to look forward to seeing them, to building up networks which correspond to networks in your brain about who you know, where you've been and what you've got to do. Signs are it's quite a positive thing to do. There's nothing to say that when we retire that we need to give up. We need to give up working, or we need to give up a form of organized and structured activity. There are so many different things that we can do. Volunteering is a very good example, but just to stay engaged with people appears to be one of the key messages. 8, to maintain or develop a compassionate view. I personally am a great believer that compassion is not simply a wonderful thing to do and makes the world a better place, but I think it actually helps our own health and well-being. You can't trick your own brain, so you can't pretend to be compassionate and get the full benefits from it. But compassionate activity, and this can be linked to meditation, but what I'm talking about is to have a caring attitude to the people around you, as far as is possible. There are clearly a number of brain networks that are linked to compassion. So, for example, areas like empathy, or what in psychology we call the theory of mind, the extent to which you understand and identify with other people, that's going to be increased activity. That's going to deliver increased activity into your brain, and the parts of your brain which are hardwired into being compassionate and caring, they're going to be worked more, and I imagine that that's going to give you some protection, at least in those areas, against a decline in function and structure. Number 9, toxins and pollutants. I'm sure nobody listening to this podcast needs to be reminded that toxins and pollutants can have a detrimental effect on our health. And I'm not just talking about very strong poisons that we may come into contact with through an industrial accident or something of that kind, but I'm even talking about excessive amounts of road pollution. If we're living in an environment where there are chemicals naturally that we're coming into contact with naturally, these may have an effect on our physical health, and this may include our brain health. We're going to be doing another podcast about this later on. There's not so much evidence, but the evidence that there is in this area is actually quite interesting. But the basic principle is try and live in a healthy environment. Try and breathe clean air. Try and drink clean water. Try and eat food that's not been contaminated with anything. And try to avoid anything in your environment that's known to be harmful to you. And finally, we come to number 10. And again, this is something which I'm drawing on my own experience as a psychologist, cognitive psychologist, but also the decades of meditation experience. And one of the things that I've observed through many years of showing people meditation techniques and getting them to work with their brains and through their brains to improve their health and well-being is the issue of motivation. Now, I have meditated with people for many, many years, and sometimes people appear to gain great benefit from meditation, and someone sitting next to them for over years appears to get very little benefit from the same method. And I've come to the conclusion that the motivation that we have that drives us forward is actually quite important in the goals that we achieve. And I'd regard our physical and mental health in the same light. If you were training for a marathon, if you were training for a sporting competition, you did the exercises but you weren't very well motivated, the chances are that you're not going to get as much benefit from the training as another person who really wanted to engage it. And I would say the same thing is about our brain. The same principle can be used in regard to brain health. If you embrace the idea that you want your brain to stay healthy, you look for opportunities to develop your brain, to maintain your brain. If you've come across a challenge, if you can't remember a word, if you can't remember a phone number, just think about it for a little bit longer. Don't immediately give in and go and look it up. See if you can work your brain a little bit harder in all the areas of your life. And I'm not talking about a dramatic transformation. I'm not talking about changing your lifestyle. I'm talking simply starting to think about using your brain. Imagine that your brain is a muscle. That's an oversimplification. The brain is the most complex structure that we know about in the universe. However, it does have the ability to respond to the environment. And if we ask it to do things, the brain is designed to work with stimulus from our environment. And so if you give it more stimulus, if you give it more work, the brain will generally, up to a point, tend to respond. There are limitations. There are limits to the amount of work a brain can do, and there are limits to how far it can develop. But for most of us, there's probably spare capacity that we can utilize. So when I talk about motivation, I'm talking about the motivation to work with your brain and to keep your brain healthy. When you're thinking about your diet, for example, and your exercise, try and generate the sense that you want to become healthier, that you want your brain to become healthier. If you were to do meditation or brain training, the idea that you're doing this exercise not because it's a chore, because it's an opportunity. In the same way that if you were an athlete training for an important race, you would see it as a goal rather than something unnecessary or unwanted in your life. That's the 10 ideas I'd like to put forward, which are all correlated with brain health, and some are directly correlated with neurodegeneration, with dementia, and some are likely to be indirectly correlated to a greater or lesser extent. Meditation and brain training, which is something you should think about doing. Smoking, I'm afraid it doesn't seem to help us in any way. Your overall body health, obesity, your diet, staying mentally active, staying socially engaged, thinking about developing or maintaining a compassionate outlook on society, avoiding pollutants and toxins as far as possible, and staying motivated to keep or improve your brain health.
Sans crier gare, je me suis retourné, disparu dans la brume, un peu trop écœuré de ces années perdues, à trop vouloir chercher à qui mettre la faute sans jamais me regarder, essayer de comprendre le pourquoi, le comment. T'es parti en courant, tanné de faire face au vent.
Okay, I'm conscious that we've only scratched the surface of these 10 factors linked to brain health and their correlation with dementia, with Alzheimer's dementia in particular. But that really is the point of this podcast. It was our intention just to draw people's attention to these 10 separate areas. There are other areas, there are other factors which are linked to brain health, neurodegeneration and dementia, but these are the 10 that we felt were the most important to talk about right now. That doesn't mean that your own ideas should begin and end with what we've spoken about here. So it just remains for me to say thank you for listening, and to give a credit to the music. The group is Qui mort you cru, and this particular track was called Ma bottiglia. Bye bye for now.
Sans crier gare, je me suis retourné, disparu dans la brume, un peu trop écœuré de ces années perdues, à trop vouloir chercher à qui mettre la faute sans jamais me regarder, essayer de comprendre le pourquoi, le comment. T'es parti en courant, tanné de faire face au vent, pour de bon, sans trop me poser de questions. J'ai beau tout faire pour me compter des peurs, me dire que c'est pas pareil. Tu me comprends pas quand je te dis que je suis juste ben au fond de ma bouteille. Faudrait un peu que j'allume avant de passer l'autre bord. Arrêtez de faire semblant de me fondre dans le décor. Ça fait déjà 5 ans que j'ai plus de tes nouvelles. Qu'est-ce qui arrive avec toi? J'ai hâte que tu m'appelles. Je pourrais peut-être arrêter de tout recommencer. Laisse faire les promesses puis la laisser tomber pour de bon, sans trop me poser de questions. J'ai beau tout faire pour me compter des peurs, me dire que c'est pas pareil. Tu me comprends pas quand je te dis que je suis juste ben au fond de ma bouteille. sans jamais s'arrêter. Me v'là rendu trop vieux pour me dire je me suis trompé. S'il faut frapper un mur pour pouvoir me réveiller, je vais en boire une dernière tout en pensant à toi. Pour de bon, sans trop me poser de questions. J'ai beau tout faire pour me compter des peurs, me dire que c'est pas pareil. Tu me comprends pas quand je te dis que je suis juste ben. J'ai beau tout faire pour me compter des